Hello and salam. My name is Zeina Azzam, and I'm delighted to be part of this series by Moraine Valley Community College for Arab American Heritage Month. So, what inspired my book? It's called Bayna Bayna, in between. The word Bayna in Arabic means between, so when you put two Baynas together, you get Bayna Bayna, which connotes betwixt and between. And this is because I felt much of my life that I live in an in between space, between cultures, between languages, between home and exile. And I can expand this feeling to one that everyone feels, between love and loss, between childhood and adulthood, living and dying. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the daughter of Palestinian refugees who fled Palestine and lost everything in the war of 1948 when Israel was established. They settled in Syria, and I was born in Syria a few years later. And when we moved to Beirut, Lebanon, I was 2 years old, so I had my childhood in Beirut. We immigrated to the United States when I was 10. Of course, my family's history is one of many Palestinian stories of dislocation, migration, uprootedness. How did I get started as a poet? Well, in Arab culture, you hear poetry around you all the time. People often recite a line of a poem in reaction to life events, kind of like a saying. But they would actually say the entire line, the complete line from the poem. I started keeping journals from a young age, and often I would write short poems in them. I think I was just always trying to dig below the surface and trying to understand, life around me, what was happening, the feelings I was having, how to cope with them. And there's, something about poetry always really has spoken to me. It's kind of a distillation of particular moments or feelings. It's sort of, I think poetry kind of gives you permission to be always in that space, to think deeply, and it's, that vulnerable, meaningful space of emotions. I often write about people in my family, those who are living as well as those who have died. I try to draw on family experiences, like what it's like to be an immigrant, to have experienced displacement, especially a refugee. I witnessed my parents' lives and saw up close how being a refugee affects your psyche all your life. I also explore my own thinking about how one transmits, the memory of these profound dislocations to children and to grandchildren. Of course, I constantly feel outraged by Israeli policies toward Palestinians and how the world generally accepts and even supports Israel's policies. So it's really hard to write about these issues in a fresh and sensitive way, and especially a way that is respectful of the people who are actually feeling and experiencing these tremendous difficulties and challenges every day. So what I try to do is build on my own experiences and what I know firsthand. But just because I'm Palestinian and have these experiences doesn't mean that I don't write about other subjects, like the universal themes of love and loss, the awe and inspiration I feel when I'm in nature, amusing encounters with people, and just everyday things. I should mention that I write in English, and although lately I've been using a lot of Arabic words in my English poems, I feel like sometimes they express what I want to say kind of more meaningfully. I like to write about food in my poems. I think many of the beautiful and sumptuous foods in Arab culture have rich traditions that are associated with the culture and the food. There are many positive things about being a writer of color, especially the sensitivity for the experiences of those outside what some call the dominant culture of the United States. There's a solidarity and understanding that's actually quite profound. I've noticed that many calls for submissions, poetry submissions in the last few years have specifically asked for poetry from underrepresented groups, and so that includes writers of color. And this is very welcome on many levels. As an Arab American writer, though, in the back of my mind, there's always the possibility of political backlash, that someone will allege that I am, anti Semitic because I'm writing something about Palestine or Palestinian rights. So I know it's almost ridiculous to think this way, and of course, it doesn't stop me from writing what I want to write. But in the current charged political climate in the United States, these thoughts, they continue to be there. I'm also grateful to be part of a vibrant and supportive community of Arab American writers. There's an organization named the Radius of Arab American Writers that I belong to. The acronym is RAWI, which is Rawi. Rawi is the Arabic word for storyteller, which I think that's really lovely. We are all storytellers in one way or another. So thank you, and happy Arab American Heritage Month.